When disaster strikes, will you be ready?
Good evening, and we begin tonight with the monster hurricane and its deadly impact already.
When all hope is gone, will the government be there for you? If you're looking for ways to take your prepping to the next level, then you've come to the right place. Broadcasting from a secure and well-prepared location, it's time for Prepping 2.0. And now, please welcome authors Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher.
Welcome, everyone. This is Shelby Gallagher, and I am caffeinated. Good. This is Prepping 2.0, joined by my co-host in this show and in life, Glenn Tate. Good morning, Glenn.
Good morning. Good morning. This is going to be a great show because we were joking about this morning. So we think that water treatment, water preps, water storage, water, the topic of water is it is the number one most important physical prep you can do. Of course, the most important prep we covered in episode 90, which was spiritual warfare. And of course, being right with God is the most important prep. So that's why we say the most important physical prep is water. And what's funny about this is here we are in episode 92, and we're just now getting around to the most important prep.
And I will add this. No, I have the outline in front of us. This is Water Preps 2.0.
Yeah,
this isn't just have a jug of water in your basement. This is very dynamic and very multi-level here.
I would say that this is probably the first episode I can think of that we've actually researched. I mean, most of it we just freestyle because we've lived it for 10 years. But this one required actual research. It also required a trip out to the garage to look at our stuff to get some brand names that we're going to give you guys. So yeah, this is a big topic, but we make it easy for people. And you mentioned an outline. I'll say this about the outline. If you're a Patreon, and we hope you are a Patreon supporter, you just send me a Patreon message via the Patreon app or desktop or whatever it is, and I will send you the 16-page outline for this show in a Word format. So that's how you can get the detailed outline. And it's got links to a couple things like some previous episodes.
Well, and here's the thing. We've had to almost start doing this because when we've done the whiteboard and put it up, it's
too much.
We are beyond that now. We are growing. So
yeah, and you hit on this, and I want to amplify this. This is a definite Prepping 2.0 topic, a 2.0er topic, because this is the intermediate level of prepping. We always say Prepping 2.0, the advanced version is topics that go beyond having an AR-15 and some cans of beans. And we always say, for example, water and community and night vision and comms. But water is always the thing that rises to the top because it is so important. And this is a great episode to share with either new preppers, or if you are a new prepper, welcome, by the way. Yeah. Just because we're Prepping 2.0 doesn't mean Prepping 1.0ers are not welcome. You're more than welcome, and we're giving you the crash course to becoming a 2.0er. But it's a great episode to share with people who are maybe on the fence. And the reason is water preps are, number one, undeniably important. You don't need to, follow the news or know all the details about the communist insurgency in America to know that you get thirsty. So everybody knows how important water is. And the second great thing about persuading people to prep via the water topic is that water preps, for the most part, are really inexpensive, take up no space, and don't require refrigeration. So it's easy to do if that first step is something that'll be easy to do with water preps. And right. You have something you want to say.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm following the outline here. I'm not sure where you jumped on the outline there, sir. But let's just get into our introductory stuff that we always go through. First of all, we always like to do the top 100 of things that disappear in a collapse. And you can find that list on our website, prepping2-0.com, on the lower right-hand page. Of the page, I should say, there's a link to it. And we are on number 74. Eventually, we'll get to 100 and we'll have to find another list. But just so happens, fortuitously, number 74 is hand pumps and siphons for water.
What?
And fuel. You'll need it for fuel, but that's another episode.
Don't mix those two.
You need to be able to pump water when there's no electricity to pump water. That's a big deal. And when go ahead.
Yeah, and this is not expensive. You're going to hear that over and over again in this episode. Go to Harbor Freight. Yes, everything's made in China, but get over it. Everything's made in China. Go to Harbor Freight. A side story about Harbor Freight. I'm going to embarrass Shelby. There are men's restrooms at Harbor Freight. And of course, almost everybody that goes to Harbor Freight is a man. And then there's women's restrooms.
And that's for me.
At Harbor Freight. And we figured out why they have women's restrooms at Harbor Freight. Because of Shelby. Yeah,
yes, they put it there for me. It's all about me.
She'll spend more time in Harbor Freight than I will. And she goes up and down the aisle. I'm telling you guys, yes, I'm bragging. That's a wonderful woman right there. But these hand pumps and even these battery-powered little transfer pumps, they call them, are like $9. And you can't beat it. Get a couple hand pumps. They're about $6. Get a couple of the battery-powered ones. They run on 2 D cells. And you're going to save yourself so much time and energy.
Oh, and a wrenched out shoulder, yeah.
Yeah, and you're not going to contaminate water by having dirty, nasty hoses and all kinds of other things. You know, there's a lot to this water prep system. And when I say there's a lot to it, there's just a few items. But those few items are really key. There's not a lot of optional stuff we're going to talk about today.
And so you're going to get ahead of ourselves. So
yes.
So then,
yes, lurkers come out of the shadows. And by lurkers, I mean the thousands, we're up to 450,000 downloads, by the way, thousands of you out there who listen to the regular show and you lurk and you don't become Patreons because you're like, $2 a month is too much money for me, or I'm scared of Patreon, or whatever it may be. So you lurk and you miss out on all the cool stuff. I'd like to mention we're going to have Patreon's questions and comments about the water topic in the after show. Mm-hmm. So come out of the shadows. Several hundred of your friends and fellow preppers have become Patreons, and it's not scary. You don't need to accept the mark of the beast to become a Patreon. There's a plus number one.
That's
that is a plus. One. Nowadays, yes. That's actually a consideration.
Yes.
And so become a Patreon, get the after show, get all the stuff, get the detailed 16-page outlines if you want them. I mean, it's worth a lot, and it's a couple bucks a month, up to $20 a month. So just come out of the shadows, lurkers.
We've been joking about it recently, but it's so true. When you become a Patreon, you become the steering committee. Yeah. You become kind of this. Remember those old cell phone commercials where it's like, you know, I'm the person who represents a cell phone company, but I have my network, and you have these thousands of people standing by.
Yeah.
You
with
guys,
hard hats on.
Exactly. You guys are our network. You're the ones that give us great ideas. You're the ones that add just an extra flavor, an extra color to the spectrum. And I'm excited to see what they bring to this topic, because water preps is so big. And I really like our outline today because I think we boiled down an incredibly huge...
Did you say boil down?
Boil down.
That's kind of funny.
That's a way to... Anyway. This topic into very concise categories and ways to manage how to prep for, water preparation. I remember I was on a radio show recently and somebody asked me, so like, how do you prep for water? I mean, what if you have a swimming pool? And I'm like, okay, that's like 10% of the population in Arizona has that, but that's not us here in Washington, right? It gets so complex.
We're going to cover swimming pools.
We are. So the next thing that's cool, and this is Patreon related, is we have new merch up. Yes. New merch on our website. So if you go to prepping2-0.com and click on shop, you will see new merch. It's so cool. And what I want to say is this, is that if you are a Patreon, you have had access to this merch. One, you've gotten some of it in your goodie bag.
Yep.
2, you've had access to ordering it now for several days.
Yep.
And now our supporters who subscribe to our email list, they've had access to it. Mm-hmm. Now the general public does. And I'm a little afraid.
We're going to run out of stuff.
We're going to run out of stuff. So if we run out of stuff, we run out of stuff. Some of the stuff we're going to let run out and we're not going to replenish. Some stuff we're going to resupply. So if you hear this and you like our merch, don't hesitate. But it's been so much fun this summer with merchandise. We've had a lot of fun because the political landscape, the landscape of the United States right now makes merchandise like this a lot of fun.
I was getting my car serviced yesterday, and I went to the place, and one of the people working there saw my face mask, which says, "I Miss America," came up to me and said, "Oh my goodness, my dad would totally want one of those." First of all, that makes me feel old, but that's okay. And so these things are going like hotcakes, especially the face mask. You have to wear a face mask. Deal with it. At least it can say what you believe, which is "I Miss America." And I guarantee you, every time you wear that out in public, at least one person will look at you, give you a thumbs up, or say, right on, that's the way I feel.
And here's what our thoughts on masks are, yes, they really are kind of, they're ineffective virtue signaling. I
Freedom
get that.
sucks.
But if there are times when we really, really, really want to go to Costco.
Yeah.
So if you must do it, put them, it's when you're walking around with the forced face mask on and it says, I Miss Americana, it kind of says basically what we want it to say, and that's I Miss America when I could walk through Costco without a face mask, right?
Exactly. You're going to love it. And it's not a lot of money, and you probably got to have one anyway. Sponsors, we'll just click off our 4 sponsors. That would be EMP Shield. That would be Numana, which is long-term freeze-dried big portion food. Cati Armor, C-A-T-I Armor, which stands for Come and Take It Body Armor, Steel Body Armor. And finally, Backwoods Home Magazine, which is a great magazine. And everything about them is on our site, prepping2-0.com. The friends and affiliates page will tell you more about the folks we just mentioned. And the merch page, I should mention, is also prepping2-0.com/shop.
Well, and going back to friends and affiliates, when you go to our website over there, there's the coupon codes, there's the extra little goodies that you get for shopping by clicking through our website. So, yeah, there you go. Those are good things. So let's hit this.
Yes, let's dive into the topic, or the topic, as they used to say on Gun Dudes.
So the water part, we've boiled it down to 4 parts. Importance, it's important. Acquisition, how to get it. Treatment and storage. So you jump right in there, Mr. Tate.
Yeah, I thought we'd start with importance, because if you somehow don't know why having fresh, clean drinking water is important, we're going to tell you. And so I want to set the stage with the scenario, because actually the scenario shows you why this is important to have. We all have normalcy bias. We covered that a lot in episode 91 and episode 2. And we all think, including Shelby and I, like when the water went out because of a electrical outage, we would just turn the spigots on and be surprised that water didn't come out. So anyway,
and actually we would be like, dang it, I knew that. I knew that, and I still turned the faucet. Doggone it, I know this.
So here's the scenario. There is no electricity or intermittent electricity. There's no security for the sites that treat water, and that could be a giant municipal water treatment plant, or it could be a small community water system that serves, say, 30 people or something from a well. So there's no electricity. There's no security of the sites, which means people can break in and do things and steal water or control the water. We'll talk more about that. Like gangs have a very specific plan to control water production and distribution facilities, or the pipes could be compromised. It could be blown up. I mean, there could be a war going on, and one side or another could be blowing up a water facility or water distribution stuff. So it's not going to be there.
Well, and think about just an EMP that takes out the electrical grid. That makes it so that water is inaccessible.
Yep, exactly. Oh, that's the thing. If there's ever an electrical disruption on a big scale, we're all going to learn about how that water got to us with electricity, and we never really thought so. So here's another idea I came up with, and it's that you need a water boy, and that's somebody on your team who is in charge of water. They may have other duties, but water is so important that I think you need somebody whose job it is to procure, treat, and disperse water. And so now we're going to go to a video clip from the fabulous movie, The Water Boy. This is Bobby Boucher explaining to us about high-quality H2O.
It's clean. It's cold. And that's what I call high-quality H2O.
So awesome right there. That's one of our
some
favorite
high-quality
clips.
H2O.
Well, some high-quality H2O. So, great video. I'm laughing at you because you said a video clip for radio. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, man. It's a video clip where we're harvesting the audio.
Yes, sorry. But I'm like, that was funny. So water obviously is needed for drinking. It's incredibly important. And not even high-quality water that's not tainted, does not have any sort of bacteria or anything that is bad for you. On a average day, when everything is going well, an average human being needs 1.5 gallons a day bare minimum of water. in other words, most of us are not drinking what we need to drink every day because being hydrated means that your brain is functioning well, your body's functioning well, and yes, your kidneys are functioning well, which is what you want to. So on a hot weather day, and I find this, I run into this every summer where I run into hydration issues because I forget hot weather. You need you don't need double that, 2.5 to 3 gallons a day in hot weather. Excuse me.
Hot water.
Yeah, in hot. Don't drink hot water in hot weather.
No.
Don't drink hot water in general.
Nope.
But because you're sweating it away, you're exerting. You double your need for it, and you can get yourself in real trouble real fast if you don't pay attention to that and stay hydrated.
Yeah, and during peacetime, a household in America uses about 150 gallons of water a day. And this is, of course, optimal conditions, showers and lawn irrigation. So when they're planning out how much water, say, a subdivision will use, they multiply the number of housing units by 150 gallons. That should give you an idea of what sort of the top end is. So I guess you could say you're going to need between 1.5 and 150 gallons a day. This drives everything. How much water storage you have, how much ability you have to transport water that you acquire elsewhere. All of it depends on how much water you're using, and like ammunition and food and medical supplies and everything else, you're going to end up needing far more than you ever thought. So understand that we're talking about a lot of water that you need to have on hand at any given time. And do the math and do accordingly. You know, death from thirst is a horrible, horrible thing. It takes about 3 days if you don't. It depends on the weather and the temperature. If you don't have any water, it's awful. Your body just destroys itself. It's writhing, awful pain. And if you could have spent a few dollars on some water treatment pills, or better yet, filters and those sorts of things, you're going to have some answering to do to God, and you're going to have nightmares about loved ones or others, you know, little kids that you could have saved, but you were too busy with the Netflix and you spent a lot of money on cigars and gourmet coffee and all of that other stuff. The stakes are high, and this is the best prepping topic because the stakes are enormously high and the cost to deal with this is enormously low, and you're never going to find that delta in any other topic. So you got to take this really, really seriously. So
and I'm just going to keep this going first. Yes, you don't want to. First of all, you don't want to die from thirst, but then those in your family and nearby that you love the most, you don't want to watch that happen. So spend those extra couple bucks. Also, think about how much water is required for cooking, cleaning, and when I say cleaning, it means utensils that you're eating with. You got to keep those clean, and clothes, keeping bacteria and gross things off of you, because that's a secondary. When you don't have good water, then cleanliness becomes a factor secondarily. And medical, when you have a wound or something and you need to clean it, you need to use clean water, clean. Next is, and I was just thinking about this because you're hearing the chickens. You're hearing the chickens in the background. Because it's one of those days where they're going to join us on the show. I need to be able to give them water. They use between all of them, I'd say a gallon a day.
14 of them.
On a day like today that's going to be really warm, they're going to use about a gallon.
Now, the cool thing about water for livestock is within the bounds of reasonableness, they don't need perfectly clean water. If you knew some of the stuff chickens ate, you'd be like, well, I'm pretty sure they don't need ultra clean water. Right. So we call that gray water. Livestock, again, it can't be full of, Giardia or something like that, which is a terrible bacteria, but it can be a little bit more dirty. And of course, irrigating crops, that's a factor. Right. And that water does not need to be drinkable by any means. In fact, if it has a little bit of, shall we say, nutrients in it, it might actually be better.
Well, and we all have animals, pets, livestock that we're like, all right, I'm providing you clean water and you're going to drink out of a puddle. Okay, fine. Our dogs that drink out of toilets and what, know what I mean? It's like, okay, right. So that's a good example. Gray water. They are like drinking it anyway. It's okay if they drink, muddy water that you've managed to procure for them. It's okay.
Yeah, and I consider the water prep topic to be a prepper gateway drug. And here's what I mean by that. My very first prep over 10 years ago was a Snapple bottle, a plastic clear Snapple bottle. And I looked at it, I remember it, and I still have it, by the way. I've kept it. It's going to go in the Prepping 2.0 museum. That'll be on probably in the Smithsonian.
I'm sure.
the Radio Broadcasting Hall of Fame probably will be there too.
Right up there with,
They're going to have to fight over the Snapple bottle.
Right. Oh my goodness.
That's going to be ugly. But it's important because it was this one simple little thing, that first step. And I knew that if I filled that with water, I could, if I needed to, depending on the weather conditions, maybe put it in the sun, and that might partially treat it with UV rays, although that's risky, I later found out. I could use that to store water, to put some water treatment pills in. It's a great gateway drug, the water preps. And, I mentioned this earlier. I focus a lot on water treatment pills, and Shelby correctly notes that they're not the be-all and end-all. We'll talk about that later. But water treatment pills are incredibly cheap, take up no space and no refrigeration, as I said. It's the easiest thing in the world to get started with prepping, and it's the most inexpensive, I think, and Shelby agrees, or she'll tell me she doesn't, but I think she does. Prioritize water preps above all other physical preps. I say it a million times. You don't need that 7th AR-15. The amount of money that an AR and optics and all of that costs, if you put it into water treatment, you and about 10 to 15 of your closest friends could be set. And that is way more important. So you need to prioritize this. It's the least interesting, and it's the thing we take for granted the most. And that's why it doesn't get the attention that it deserves. I don't know. And that might be reflected in the fact that we're on episode 92 and we're talking about it for the first time. So it's a great way to persuade people, as I mentioned, about who might be on the fence, about becoming a prepper. And because it's so easy and it's so just undeniably important.
And let me jump in here. I mean, think about all the times that, the Red Cross, the government says, have a 3-day supply in case there's a hurricane or in case of a natural disaster. They always include in there water or water treatment. I remember years and years ago when I lived in a big city and we had a boil order, and it was like, oh my gosh. And everybody bought out, we've seen that happen before, and everyone buys out all the water, no more bottled water. And then you can buy, and then at that time I was able to go to Costco and find a really cool filter. These are all things that it's easy to convince that non-prepper, look, we're supposed to do this. It's part
of the government said so.
It's part of emergency preparedness. That 3-day water, it's a gateway to have that conversation.
Yeah, and if you're new to prepping, start with water. And if you've been prepping for a while, beef up your water.
Exactly.
And we have a couple more minutes in this segment. I wanted to mention this, and it almost slipped my mind until it didn't, and then I wrote it down. That is winter. Here it is. It's July. It's August, actually. It's August, and we're recording this show, and it's very easy to think about water. I looked out at the grass, and it's all brown, and I thought about water. Remember, in the winter, you need water also. And here's the thing about water. Factor this into everything we're about to say. If things are frozen, it's going to affect, storing water and moving water and all of that. So think about that. Yes.
Well, and freezing temperatures affect what you just said, your ability to acquire it, but also depending on the climate, it'll make it easier to harvest it too.
Yeah, it could be snow, could be ice.
Could be snow, could be ice, could be all that. So it's very seasonal. Think about that as you go through seasonal things. And so an accessory, and we only have like 30 seconds here, but I want to kind of just squeak this in. Accessory to water preps, just because there can be those little microorganisms, antidiarrheal pills, just in case you have some sort of reaction to some sort of bug that's in the water. That typically is what happens, is you then have to go use the restroom an awful lot.
And you can ironically dehydrate yourself from the diarrhea. And just a couple more seconds and I'll say this. Get extra of everything we're talking about for charitable purposes and for handing out to people that you want to buy their friendship and make them allies, so they provide you intelligence and fighters, and they trade you, and you guys live. You're more likely to live because there's more of you working together. Get extra of everything we're talking about.
We're going to take a quick break. We got so much more to talk about. Stay tuned.
We'll be right back with more of Prepping 2.0 with authors Shelby Gallagher and Glenn Tate right after this.
Shelby Gallagher here. We found that you need to layer your food preps.
Yeah, this is Glenn Tate here. A lot of times the hardest part of layering is the long-term foods. We love Numana foods, which have a 25-year shelf life and are non-GMO. Also, organic meals are available.
Numana comes in family-style portions and in bulk. This is not backpacking food. It's family meals that last for at least 25 years. The perfect freeze-dried part of your food layering.
You can get a sample of Numana meals for $19.95 and see for yourself. You will be amazed.
Prepping 2.0 listeners get a 10% discount by entering the code PREP.
Go to newmana.com or click the link on the Prepping 2.0 website.
Give it a try. Newmana.com. That is NUMANNA.com.
PrepperNet, where preppers unite. Looking to meet other like-minded people in your area? Looking to start your own prepper group? Already have a group? Join PrepperNet.com. PrepperNet has gathered the biggest names in the industry to help unite preppers everywhere. Join John Jacob Schmidt, Scott Hunt, Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy, Glenn Tate, Shelby Gallagher, Charlie Hogwood, Samuel Culper, Survivor Jane, Rick Austin, Franklin Horton, Ryan Mitchell, and Brian Duff. Our team is united. Check us out at PrepperNet.com. PrepperNet, where preppers unite. PrepperNet.com.
When the grid goes down, darkness will descend fast. Used to be there was nothing you could do about an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, or CME, coronal mass ejection. Now you can protect your electronics, protect your family, thanks to EMP Shield. EMP Shield invented a simple-to-install device that prevents whatever's connected to it from frying in an EMP or CME, and it costs just a few $100s. EMP Shield has been tested by independent laboratories and passed muster with the government, which has ordered lots of them. Google EMP Shield and see for yourself. And save some money. Get a $50 discount per device. Go to prepping2-0.com. Click on the Friends and Affiliates page, then click on the EMP Shield logo. At checkout, use coupon code PREPPING2.0. It's all one word.
Prepping 2.0 is about that next level of prepping. One of the key 2.0 items to have is bulletproof body armor plates. I used to think body armor was too tactical for a regular guy like me, but it isn't. Give yourself, your family, and your team an unfair advantage when bullets are flying. Body armor used to be expensive and hard to get. Not anymore. KD Armor, and that stands for Come and Take It, makes solid and affordable body armor for normal people. Get body armor while you can. The clowns in Congress are trying to prohibit future sales. KD Armor is the place to get it. CATI Armor.com. Prepping 2.0 listeners get a 10% discount when you use the coupon code GRANT.
And we're back with more of Prepping 2.0 with authors Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Shelby Gallagher. We are going to just plow right into our second part, next topic, or next
subpart.
Next item on the list of things to talk about: acquisition of water. And so we're talking about getting the physical water, not treated water, but getting water. And this is just whether you get it from a lake, a stream, a puddle, whatever. Water will need to be treated unless it's from a well you know is good.
Yep, and that's the big one. Now, if you live out in a rural area and you use a well all the time and you know it's good, then some of this stuff doesn't apply to you. But by the way, you better have electricity for it or a hand pump. So the vast majority of people will not have a well. They will not know it's okay. So the vast majority of people will need to treat water in one of the ways we're going to talk about.
And so let me say this too. As we talk about this, I'm going to put a little caveat in here and jump off our little outline here, Mr. Tate.
It's quite all right.
Water acquisition, whether it be by rain or collecting rain, or there's legalities in every state over this. So please know your legalities. I just did a show on KHNC recently with Glenn Biddle about, we were talking, that KHNC audience is in Arizona. You can harvest rainwater. Colorado and Arizona, but Arizona at the time.
Yeah, that's true.
You can harvest rainwater. In Washington State and Oregon State, where we live, you cannot. That's illegal. Isn't that crazy?
It is, and it only affects your peacetime planning. If you've got a big water system that involves harvesting rainwater, then the legality is an issue. Obviously, in a collapse, that'll be one of the last laws that gets enforced. But still, you need to think about it now.
Just think about that now. So just I just want to throw that out there. But next on our list is stored water. In other words, if you start storing up, cisterns or just bottled water.
Cases of Costco bottled water.
They might get you through a short collapse, or one where there's just, sometimes the well works, sometimes it doesn't, but don't count on that stored water because it's finite. And to top that off, you cannot store enough water for a long-term collapse. You cannot. You need to somehow top that off. So you need to think about where you're going to acquire it above and beyond what you have stored.
Exactly. And that doesn't mean you don't store up, say, we'll focus on the easiest thing and the thing that most people think of, cases of Costco or Sam's Club or whatever, bottled water. Do all that.
Yes.
Do all that. And we talk about that more in some detail later. So do that and have a long-term solution and have a medium-term solution. Shelby, this sounds like layering.
It does. And let me add this too. Think about ways to reuse water. Like after let's just say you use stored water to wash dishes. It's soapy, it's gross, it's got food particles in it. Give it to the chickens. Feed the garden. Don't just let it be runoff. As much as you can, recycle your own water.
Yeah, and now we're going to talk about sources of water. And one thing to think about before you even start thinking about that topic is security. And the reason for that is the places you go to physically acquire water, or when you're transporting it back to where it needs to be, there are going to be other people who want that water really, really badly. Think about all the documentaries about the African, wildlife and everything. How many times do all the gazelles go to the watering hole and there are the lions there to harvest them? So the watering hole is a death trap, and you need to understand there's a security element to everything we're talking when we talk about sources of water. We had here's another very specific, not an African safari thing, but an actual real life America reality thing. We had Officer Mack on, and that was episode 34. I'll link to it in the show notes. And he talked about conversations he's had with serious gang dudes who lead gangs. This is no BS stuff. And he said that they have told him that their plan, when the collapse starts, they've already planned this ahead. They're going to control water treatment areas or facilities, and they're going to control water distribution, and they're going to sell it to you. And you can only imagine what some of those prices are, and you don't want to be in that situation.
You do not want to be beholden to a gang. You just don't. So, and this is a great opportunity for your mutual assistant group or team to seize hold of those areas and hold on to them so that they don't get into the hands of nefarious people.
Exactly. You need to be in control. Oh my goodness, you just said that we need to seize stuff and control it. That sounds super mean. Yes, I did, and it's not mean. It's called surviving, because if you're listening to this, you're a good person, odds are, and you can seize and hold the water for your own purposes, and your own purposes are taking care of your people and charity. I mean, is it better to have, a motorcycle gang controlling the water in your area, or is it better for you and your dudes controlling it?
Well, and we know this. People who, whether it be gangs, whether it be terrorists outside the United States, whether it be, honestly, China, who's made it very clear that they are engaged in a people's war on us. We had that conversation with Trevor Loudon. One of those key method of warfare is to take out infrastructure. Part of infrastructure is water and electricity. When you take out electricity here in the United States, you've taken out water. We shouldn't have to defend this, sadly, but we have to. This will be an issue when things get really hot. I'm just saying. Yeah,
and when you control the water and some bad guy doesn't, you are able to not only be charitable, but you're able to, and I mention this all the time, and people think I'm kidding, you will get allies.
Well,
this is a serious deal. You'll get auxiliary people, you'll get fighters on your side, you will get all kinds. Not only will you be helping people, you'll be strengthening your tribe, your group.
Well, and strengthening the ability to get to restoration faster instead of having to it takes out the step of having to seize it back from the bad guys, right?
That's right. It certainly does. Well, municipal water supply. So I'm assuming almost everybody listening to us, is on a city or a county or some kind of like regular, municipal water service. And here's the thing about partial collapses, and we believe that collapses are usually partial and not total. I mean, the meteor strike to the earth is kind of the total collapse, or nuclear war or something. Well, municipal water supplies might be on intermittently, and you should take advantage of that. Part of your water plan should include the idea that, for goodness sakes, water actually comes out of the tap and it's actually drinkable. Take advantage of it. So that's a thing.
Fill up the bottles, fill up the cisterns, fill up. Ask people who live in the Middle East. That's very common.
Yeah.
Where their utilities are very, very intermittent, and they have to plan their entire day around that that schedule. And welcome to the chickens again who agree with me.
We love you, chickens. The other thing about municipal water supplies is even if there isn't one where you live, there might be one in the next town over. And you should factor that in too. This is why we're going to get into transporting water and storing water, because that's a thing, and I think you should assume that the water after a collapse is untreated. And I made this number up. This is not scientific. After maybe a week or something, assume it's untreated, because if they don't have all the chemicals that they use and all the machinery that they use to treat it, it could start getting bad. Shelby, what's a great way to test whether the water's any good or not for human consumption?
Well, on those gangs that you've kind of taken prisoner, have them take a sip and see what happens. Give them about 24 hours to see what happens.
Test it out.
They may not die right away.
Yeah.
They're probably not, actually. What's going to happen is they're going to have some gastrointestinal issues. Just test it out on them. The other thing, what we're talking about right here in particular, municipal supply of water, this applies to natural disasters.
Yeah.
When we have hurricanes, when we have tornadoes, when we have a breach or a stop of some kind. I think about hurricane, I think it was Maria in Houston, the devastating one a few years ago. Standing water everywhere, but people are dying of thirst.
Yep.
Because of the tons of untreated water literally everywhere, and then the bugs and bacteria that grew in it. So, yeah.
Exactly. Well, here's another source of water, and it's what I call store-bought water. And this would be anything in a grocery store. The 1-gallon jugs, the 2 and 3 and maybe even up to 5-gallon kind of square ones that are in supermarkets with the little spigot.
Well, then there's the big kind of industrial ones that you can get at livestock supplies, where it's big. Those aren't just for cows, right?
Yeah, and that's more storage. We're going to get into that, but
okay.
So the 2-gallon ones, let's just focus on the. I shouldn't focus on 2-gallon. The 1-gallon ones that you get, they're pretty fragile. I mean, if you drop one of those, it's going to open up. They're not made for this. They're made for, I don't know what they're made for.
Well, they're made to set on a countertop and dispense from the little spigot that's on them.
Exactly. And of course you have to keep these things out of the light, because light hitting the water, there's still teeny weeny little bits of bacteria in there that are okay levels for drinking. But if they sit out in the sun, they're going to replicate, and it's going to become a problem. And you need to rotate store-bought water, of course. And then there's everybody's favorite, including ours, which would be bottled water, like the Costco cases. Shelby, what is a case which is 40 half-liter things, so 20 liters of water at Costco costs right now?
Well, it's about $2.50.
Yeah, incredibly inexpensive. And you can stack them. I've never tried this. This is Glenn Tate's guess.
So quiz time to our fans.
Yeah. How stackable do you think they are? I think you could probably go 10 cases high before you'd start to crush the bottom one. The point is that they're very stackable, very storable. They too must be kept out of light. It's good to rotate them, but they don't really expire and they don't really taste bad. I've had water bottles that have been, and by the Costco water bottles, I should be more specific, been in my truck, where it gets hot and it gets cold and stuff. I've had them in there for several years, and I tried one and it was just fine. So, I mean,
well, and
they should be okay.
I think actually this is I'm going to throw in a bet here. I think they're stackable to 5 or 6 high. The reason why is I've been in the cabin that you talk about in your books, and where you stacked water.
Yeah.
I think it's about 5 or 6 high. And what happened is after the course of several years, the ones on the bottom, because the plastic starts to degrade and cracks. And I've walked into the basement of the cabin where there's standing water because a couple of them punctured. So So there's that.
That's right. That's right. So that's another reason to rotate them, is because the plastic gets weak.
And then when you stack them, definitely rotate them. Based on a true story.
That's right.
Yeah, but they're still good. There's still several cases there that are good.
They're going to stay there too. One of the things about water bottles from the Costco kind, and of course Sam's Club and everywhere else is the same thing. They're very handy. And they're very transportable, and they're good for vehicles. You can throw them in your vehicle. And here's the cool thing. You know them to be clean water. As long as that lid or bottle cap or whatever is sealed, you can know that it's clean water. And if you're giving it to someone else, they can know it's clean water. And if you're bartering with it, it is a known quantity in the sense of being clean water. So those are some big advantages for we'll call like Costco cases of water. Plus, and keep the empty bottles in the lids. I know we're all used to crushing them down to like take up less space in landfills. Don't do that with these going forward, because they're going to be incredibly handy storage and transportation containers, which we're going to talk about in detail in a few minutes.
So the next one is, and I have a lot of experience in this, and I talk about this in my books too, creeks, rivers, and lakes. Know where they are in your area and know how their flow is. Do they flow only in the summer or only in the spring and fall, during snowfall or weather times? Know this. And know this, they are not, don't ever assume that even though, especially, I think, again, I grew up in Colorado, when you're looking at this crystal clear creek that is super cold water, it's got to be clean. No, it's not. There's going to be Giardia in it every time you need to treat it. But you are what... I would rather purify that water than a dirty puddle. So know where they are, know how they flow, because it can be a source of water, whether it be all year or a certain time of year. We know in our area exactly where those are. We know how close they are, because then we have to think about probably some transportation. So the other thing is rain barrels.
Yeah, and here's the thing about rain barrels. I guess they work, and we have one. We haven't hooked it up. I know everyone's like, oh my goodness, Glenn and Shelby are the ultimate preppers, and they haven't even got rain barrels going. Nope, they work well. We live in Western Washington, so there's a fair amount of rain. I guess they're great, but see, it's one part of all of this. That's why we talk about layering. That's why we talk about seasonal water flows, because maybe in the summer, this creek doesn't flow. Have rain barrels and do creeks and lakes and do all these things together, because cumulatively you might have enough water.
Here's the thing, though. We have a rain barrel that is meant for gardening, and I did a little video on this. It is this huge rain barrel that has an overflow 12 inches off the ground. It's an absolute waste of space. It's meant for some gardener out there. So I
think it was more of like aesthetic. I think it was more like somebody, the people who built this house watched a Martha Stewart episode and they go, wow, that's really cool. And they went and they did it because it's not terribly functional. That being said, there are very, very functional ones. And they're specialized garden stores, and they have the spigot on the bottom, and they have all the stuff. Another thing about all this water stuff, I guess it goes without saying, don't cheap out.
Nope.
I don't get like that bargain rain barrel, that doesn't have a spigot, and then, it creates all these problems.
Well, and make sure it's, again, in our part of the country, they're hard to find because of legalities, but try to find those that are for rain barrel for storing gray water for potential human use, not for garden use, because they will have, again, an overflow that doesn't allow the barrel to fill up. That's my experience on that. So that being said, there's other ways you don't need a rain barrel to store water from the rain. You can find other vessels that will do that, which I think is interesting. It's an interesting concept. We're limited here because I can't get the resources to try it out here. So yes, we have a rain barrel that's meant for gardening. Right now it feeds the chickens and it does that job. And here's the thing, very seasonal. Right now in Western Washington,
no rain.
There's not a whole lot of rain right now. Now ask me this question in December. I'll give you some more data.
And there are a lot of parts of the country. I'm thinking of Florida, for example, maybe Louisiana, where it rains all the time for like 20 minutes. And so you have some rain most days, and that would be really good setup for there.
Well, and let me add to that. In Colorado, Arizona, places like that, in the summer, about 2 o'clock every afternoon, you have this 20-minute down. Oops, as I hit the lamp above me, you have this 20-minute downpour. And then that's your chance to collect rain. So in Arizona, I know a big way to do that is with basically a rain collecting roof. This roof, all it is on the ground. This roof collects water and uses a gutter and goes right into a cistern. Some really cool YouTube stuff out there on that. So we haven't really gone into that in our own preps. We haven't, but there are awesome resources out there for how to collect rain and store it. We just haven't done it.
Swimming pools, speaking of Arizona.
Yes.
A fraction of a percent of you listening may have a swimming pool. They're a thing. The water is pre-chlorinated. Of course, you have to get some of that stuff out, and you still have to filter it. We'll talk about that in a moment, because swimming pool water is disgusting. I guess it exists, and it's one of those cool things. I think it's one of those things, one of those Horseshack moments where, like, someone doing a prepping video will, like, raise their hand and say, oh, I know the answer, swimming pools, and it seems really brilliant. I don't know how practical it is.
I've not heard of any prepper saying, yes, I have a swimming pool to store water.
Yeah.
I don't know of anyone who does that. But it is a source of water in a collapse. Okay, but you just need to think through how you're going to filter out the chlorine. It's also, think of it as if you can get a decent filter to filter out the chlorine just enough so that you have gray water. So you have enough to clean, enough to sanitize, enough to flush toilets, things like that. Here's the thing. I know where we live, we're on a well. And the people who operate the well...
It's a group well, which is an important fact.
It is. It's chlorinated by the people who dispense it.
Treatment facility,
We have a filter to get that chlorine out. Otherwise, it tastes like you're drinking swimming water.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? So we already have a filter in our water system for that very thing. Not hard to do, but just so you know, it's not just swimming pool water. You got to get the
hot
chlorine.
Tub.
Yeah, a little hot tub, yeah.
Yeah. And another thing, and this is not a huge factor in this big system, is your water heater. If you have a traditional water heater that holds 50 gallons or whatever and then heats it, there's a little spigot at the bottom. I think that would be really rusty, disgusting, gross water. But that's another Horseshack prepper thing. Like, oh, do you know your water heater has water in it? And okay, great. You can use it for something, but it's only a few gallons. But we thought we'd mention it.
Yeah, and honestly, if you have, I don't know, you've heard of people using that hot water heater water, like in one of those 3-day emergencies, like when a tornado takes out infrastructure for a few days or whatever. It is definitely not a long-term solution. It will definitely need to be filtered, treated in some way because because it's been in the tank that has not.
It doesn't flow really.
It doesn't flow really well. Yeah. So a water well. That's the next thing on our list. Go ahead.
Yeah. Water wells, for the most part, need electricity, and that's been covered previously. Now, when we speak of water wells, we mean like an individual well on an individual property. One of the things is the legality stuff, because when we got to our place, I thought, it'd be really great to have a backup well. Unfortunately, being a lawyer doing land use stuff and regulatory stuff, it takes the fun out of life because I know how hard it is to get the permits to do this. And so that thought came to my mind, and a nanosecond later perished because I knew the multi-year process it would take to get a water well in this state. Also, depending on where you are, the cost of a water well could be pretty expensive. Our neighbor had to put a well in. Is $40 a foot, and it went down to, what was it?
Several hundred feet.
A couple hundred feet. Do the math, you guys. I mean, that's just a tremendous amount of money to do this. So that's not true elsewhere.
And the reason why is because the community well in our area was maxed out. They didn't have any more. Here's the thing and you and I you need to really look into this if you want a well, and you need to do your due diligence. Government has gotten in the way of people being able to access water. Brian Domke at Strategic Landscape Designs knows how to help you navigate that. But government has basically made it very difficult on purpose for people to access wells and to be able to just drill a well on your property. So just be ready to do that. They need electricity, or a hand pump, and you need to be able to secure it. And your tribe, your mutual assistant group, needs to be able to secure it for 24/7, especially if others in the neighborhood, in the area, figure out that you have one.
Yeah, and Shelby mentioned Brian Domke at Strategic Landscape Design. That's a website, Strategic Landscape Design.
And he's on our Friends and Affiliates page.
Friends and Affiliates page. And also, he was our guest twice. He was our guest in episodes 27 and 60. Links in the show notes. Isn't that cool? I love saying that. Links in the show notes.
Very cool. So
we're trying to up our game. We're trying to become more of a resource for you guys and put links in the show notes. The show notes, by the way, prepping2-0.com. This will be episode 92. You click on that. Bada bing, bada boom. All kinds of links in there. So that's where to find this stuff.
And if you want to find Patreon, same website. That just click on the Patreon symbol. I want to talk about the next one, saltwater.
Okay.
It's a crazy amount. 80-90% of the earth is covered by saltwater, inaccessible water.
72%.
72%. I'm so glad you researched that. It's a huge amount. Technology needs to lean more, and it is, towards desalination, because I will tell you this. There's I remember watching this. There used to be a show about 10 years ago it's called I Can't Believe I Survived, or I Can't Believe I Lived Through This. And it's people were caught in really extreme situations.
Was that the show about my first marriage?
Oh my goodness, no. But I remember watching one of these shows where these people were stranded on a little raft like in the Florida Keys, and they were just adrift, and it was awful. And they're in the sun, and they're dying of thirst. They literally are dying of thirst. And one of them is like, I'm so thirsty, and he drank the seawater.
Bad idea.
And he died from it. Yep. And the sharks got him. So it was awful.
Saved on burial
Do
costs.
not drink salt water. Don't drink it. It does the exact opposite to you. Please do not.
And desalinization of salt water, I put on the list because I guess it exists. This is one of those other like prepper fantasy topics. Like, well, I'll get a $30,000 desalinization machine. Now, I bet somebody's going to listen to this and put in the comments, the desalinization machine is actually much less. It might be true. Didn't research it. Our point with this is sort of raise and dismiss this. Yes, there's salt water in some places. Yes, there's desalinization machines. I don't know if they're even remotely effective and cost effective. Look it up yourself. It's a thing, but we don't really think it's your go-to primary thing on this.
And it depends on where you live. We live near an ocean. It's a thing. Most people don't.
Yeah.
There you go. And
you can also distill salt water and basically heat it up, and the steam that comes off is pure water. You can do that either with traditional heat, I guess electricity, propane, or wood, which would be, I think, a tremendous waste of energy resources, or a solar one where you got a tarp and it's like a Fieldcraft thing and it drips fresh water into a thing. That's great. You'll get literally pints a day of water, and you need gallons a day.
That's like when all else has failed, which is why we're telling you to do these things.
That's why we're making fun of it, because come on, guys. It's prepping 2.0. You can do better than that. You can do better than a tarp and a string and getting 4 teaspoons of water, and that just postpones your death from thirst by about 4 hours.
The other one is a makeshift dam. What?
Yeah, and we watch this show, Homestead Rescue. We love that show, and they go into a homestead, and these guys from Alaska, and they make everything work. It's really a cool show. Gives you a lot of ideas. You could make a dam if you have a creek, and then that would pool some of the water behind it. Figure it out yourself if you've got a creek or something, and you can do that. We just kind of bring it up as a possibility to get you thinking about it. We don't know.
Watch your local land use laws.
In peacetime, I can tell you this: in the state of Washington, it's actually a criminal charge to dam water. So think about that.
To even redirect some of it.
Yeah.
Because even
to let your cows walk through a creek is theoretically a crime.
Same with Oregon. It's awful. So we only have like a minute, if that, half a minute. So I'm going to just wind this down.
Please do.
We have so much more to talk about.
Oh, golly.
Please join us in the after show if you are a Patreon. But folks, this is huge, and your life depends on it. Let me leave you with our very famous quote from Benjamin Franklin: "Failing to prepare is preparing to fail." Folks, have a great week. We'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Prepping 2.0 with authors Shelby Gallagher and Glenn Tate. All of the fun and easy prepping information heard on this podcast can be found online at prepping2-0.com. You can also find out more about Glenn's books online at 299days.com and about Shelby's books online at agreatstate.com. Until next time, be smart, be safe, and be prepared.